Welcome everybody to this first episode of Matterport Shop Talk. Thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. Just wanted to introduce, I guess, this webinar series and what we're going to be covering a little bit today. Let me get this working. There we go. All right. So today, our lineup is looking like this. We have a really special guest today to cover the Capture app, Matterport Capture. Kirk Stromberg is with us, and we'll get to introducing him shortly. I'll cover a few how-tos related to iPhone, and then we'll get to your questions. So if you already have questions, you can go ahead and ask them. There is a questions panel that you'll be able to find. It's in the, if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, if you look in the, I guess the panel on the right side, it is, at least for me. There should be a questions panel there. You can expand that, ask your question, just go ahead and type it in, and we'll try to get to those at the end. If we don't get to all of them live, I do apologize ahead of time. We'll see what we can do about answering them via social and email and things like that later on. So please do go ahead and ask your questions at any time. At any time during the webinar. All right. So with that said, let's kick it off. And I'd like to introduce Kirk. Kirk, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Amir. Appreciate it. So hey, everybody. My name is Kirk Stromberg. I'm on the product management team here at Matterport, and I've been with the company for about 4 years. My team and I focus on all things with the inbound funnel. So we talk about anything to do with capture, the Matterport Pro camera, our third-party cameras and scanners that we support, and the cloud processing pipeline that uses all those ingredients to create a Matterport model from that capture. I'm going to talk about 3 things here today. First up is going to be about recent releases on iOS. Sorry, my dog is barking on the background. So this is one of the benefits of doing everything from home. You get to hear a little bit of the domestic situation here. So in terms of recent releases on iOS, last month we released Capture 4.0. And in this release was a fairly important feature called Matterport for iPhone. And this allows you to use the camera on your iPhone or your iPad to be able to capture space just as if you would have done with a regular 360 camera or a connected scanner. Now, this is all part of our strategy at increasing and widening the funnel of methods and techniques that you can use to capture and create a 3D space. So this is intended to widen the toolkit. It gives you more options that you can use to capture a space. And it also increases awareness with the population. So people who want to be able to try capturing a Matterport space can do so before they make a larger commitment. Now, when we release an update like this and we release an important feature like this, we don't want to affect the existing capabilities of our camera, of our solution. But in this case, we did have a couple bugs in the initial 4.0 release, and I want to talk about those in a little bit, or right now. These bugs primarily affected people with connected cameras, and happily we released Capture 4.02 last week in the App Store, which solves these problems. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody understood and was aware that a solution for these bugs was out now. And if you had been using Capture 4.02 from the beta release in test flight, you have 2 options. So you can continue to use test flight, and you'll receive updates and notifications of additional releases of Matterport Capture for additional betas. If you want to move back to the production App Store release, you can simply go to the iOS App Store, find Matterport Capture, and install that directly over test flight. The 4.02 build in test flight and the 4.02 build in the App Store are identical. They install back and forth across each other. There's no need to delete or remove or uninstall. And I do want to remind everybody that if on iOS, if you uninstall an application, it uninstalls that application's data. So to make sure you preserve your model data, you want to just simply install from the App Store. And again, staying on test flight is also an option if you want to continue to get pre-release beta versions. Now, one thing we want to talk about too is as a result of our postmortem with the 4.0 launch, we looked at how these bugs got through and what we can do to try and mitigate and minimize the chance of it happening again. And as a result, we're increasing our automated test coverage, what we call module and unit testing. And we're revamping and expanding our use of analytics to make sure that we can understand populations and symptoms that might have popped up, but that we missed in terms of testing and checking before the release. For all versions of Capture going forward, we're also going to make sure that we have public betas so that everybody can have a chance to try it before we do an actual production release. So Amir's going to go through some details with Matterport for iPhone in a little bit, but I wanted to hit two more topics before we move to that. And so let's move on to our next topic, which is releases on Android. Now, as you may or may not know, we are working on Capture for Android, and this is still in active development. We're in a phase what we call now as a controlled public beta. So you can sign up for the beta at matterport.com/beta. And what we do is we will enable small groups of folks to try the beta, and you'll receive an email with a link and instructions on how to get started once we enable that for you. Now, to use Capture for Android, you need Android 8.0 or higher, and that's the release nicknamed Oreo. You also need an Android device that has at least 3 gigabytes of RAM or higher, and that's to make sure that performance is acceptable. Let's see. Again, this is a waitlist sign-up process now. We're moving to expanding that as development continues and as the solution gets more robust. Right now, we're on Capture for Android. You can use connected cameras only, so we don't support at the moment using your phone or tablet's camera to capture yet. That'll be coming shortly. Right now, you can use the Matterport Pro 3D camera. You can use the Insta360 One X, or the Ricoh Theta Z1, or the Ricoh Theta V camera. The BLK360 is not supported yet either.
Well, I think I may have lost you, Kirk. You still with us?
I am. Can you hear me? I can see you.
Sorry, guys. We're having a little technical difficulties with the audio, it looks like. And
One second. I'll do the commercial thing. Can you hear me now? Okay, I've switched over to computer microphone. Okay, folks, I'm going to continue. I think from what I'm seeing and hearing right now, we might actually just have an audio problem on Amir's side. It sounds like folks might still be able to hear me. So I'm going to continue talking. Let's see. So let's just recap Android. So for Android, we're in controlled beta now. We'll be moving to open public beta in a few months. In active development, sign up at matterport.com/beta. There'll be a link to the Android beta sign up page, and we'll be enabling folks as we proceed and development moves a little bit further. So I'm going to move on to my third topic, and I'm just checking to make sure everybody can still hear me. I'm not talking to myself. Okay, so the third topic is what's coming in the next several months. So in terms of, I want to give you a sneak peek of things that we're working on, areas of our focus, and so you get a sense of what's coming. So one of the next things up is improving our support for the Leica BLK360 lidar scanner. So some of you know this is the highest end professional lidar scanner. And we've had some issues in terms of connecting with those cameras or with that scanner. And we're really focused right now on trying to solve that problem and issue and get this to be a robustly supported solution for us. So that's one of the near-term things that are coming up soon. Insta360 has a new camera out called the 1R. This is a successor to the 1X. This is a modular camera. that you can have the option of putting a 360 module in there. And so we're going to be supporting the 1R with Matterport Capture. And we will continue to work on Matterport for iPhone. You'll see some additional improvements in terms of stitching quality, alignment. We're experimenting with some different capture mechanism or capture methods in terms of the coverage and how you go about doing that. And so you'll continue to see some improvements there as we continue development. As I said before, we'll open up the capture on Android beta. And in the coming months, we'll also open up mobile capture on Android so that you can use the camera in your Android phone or your Android tablet to be able to capture. Now, most of the high-end flagship series on Android, at least for the phones, often also have an ultra-wide field of view camera, very much like the iPhone 11. So just like the iPhone 11, you can use a simple capture to capture most of the space because of the ultra-wide field of view gives you a really wide sweep through the space. Now, Ricoh also has a new camera, the Theta SC2, and we will be supporting that in the coming months as well. And we will also bring back a feature that we had in the initial 4.0 release of Capture, where you can fix a misaligned scan. And the notion here is that if I notice that a scan has been placed on the mini-map in a position that is not correct, I want to be able to provide a hint and bring that back to a different spot. 1 second, guys. I'm just going crazy. I want to be able to bring that back to a different spot, give a hint, and let the system attempt to realign it into the proper location. So we'll be bringing that back. And then one of the other things that we're going to be working on too is just better guidance for you in terms of the size of a job that is probably, what's the appropriate limit for the size of a job based on the camera and the mobile device and the space that you're working with. So for instance, if I am on a high-end iPad or iPhone, I can typically scan a much larger space than I can with a lower-end, older iOS device and camera. And what we want to try and do is give you better guidance in terms of when you're starting to push the limits of that combination. And it depends on the camera and the iOS device. So we want to try and get better guidance out there for you so that you can understand when you're kind of reaching the limits for a single space and it's time to start creating into it.
All right, thank you very much, Kirk. I apologize for kind of interrupting there a little bit. All of a sudden my audio completely cut out. I wasn't sure if it was yours or mine or whatever, but we got it all straightened out. So thanks everybody for sticking through that. That's awesome. Okay, so let me get back into here. And all right, so at this time, I think what I'd like to do is go over some how-to stuff. So we heard Kirk talk about Capture and all the fun and exciting things that are being worked on, things like Android, which is amazing, and the 1R, which I know a lot of people are looking forward to. So very, very much looking forward to that. What I wanted to talk about, I wanted to take the next 20 or so minutes and cover a couple of how-to things. So I wanted to talk about scan types. I'll show you on my screen exactly what I'm talking about. The importance of turning around the camera, we'll cover that, and sharing your models. So basically, let me just get out of here. I think you can see me or my screen over here. Let me see here. Hang on 1 second. See what we got here. All right. There we go. Okay. So I hope you can see this. I'm sharing my the screen on my phone, and basically this is just the standard app. And I'm just going to go ahead and click. So basically down here, you see there's a little options button here. Let me, you can see it right here. There's a little options button. I'm going to tap that, and then you get this scan options. So this is the scan types that I'm talking about. They're grouped into 2 different sections. You've got 3D scans and 360 capture. For anybody who's been with Matterport for any period of time, you should have an understanding of what the difference is here, but I want to just kind of take this moment and talk to some new users who may not be as familiar. So if you are familiar with this, I really appreciate your patience. as I work through this. And then we'll talk about the difference between simple scan and complete scan as it relates to scanning with an iPhone, and different iPhone models, and which to use depending on the iPhone model that you're using. So basically, 3D scan is a scan that actually records or converts to 3D data. If you're using a 3D device like the Matterport Pro cameras or the Leica BLK that Kirk mentioned, these are cameras that actually capture in 3D. They also see 2D, but they're capturing in 3D. So every time they do a scan, they're capturing in 3D. You can choose whether to take advantage of that 3D data or not, meaning if you choose the 360 capture option down here, this guy here, then you're basically not taking advantage of that 3D data. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not going to align that scan with the other 3D scans. It's just a 360 panorama that is incorporated as part of the overall model information, the data, but you're not going to be able to navigate to it in the same way that you do as you navigate between the 3D scans that you've captured. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Basically, 3D scans become part of your dollhouse, your 3D model structure. 360 scans don't. Instead, they're just panoramas that you can refer to. You can include them in highlight reels. You can download them. They do get processed, but they're not going to be part of the dollhouse. You can't just as easily move from one to the next like you do with 3D scans. So just keep that in mind when you're scanning. There is an advantage, obviously, to 360 scans, and that is if you can't get to that location with 3D scans, like for example, if it's outdoor in the middle of the sun, front yard, backyard, for example, with real estate, it's just a good example, I suppose. And you want to include those, the hero shot of the house, anytime you're scanning outdoors and you can't get to that area with 3D scans, then you can just pick up the camera, go out to that location, capture a 360 view or 360 scan, and then allow your visitors to see it via the highlight reel, even embedded into a matter tag if you want. In other ways, we'll get to that in future sessions. What we can cover, how to embed and things like that. But just so you understand the difference between 3D scan, 360 capture, they're very different. So make sure you know what you're scanning into, so that when you scan, you see it come up. Just to kind of show you here, this button right here is where my 360 scans or 360 views are located. So if I tap that, I'll see anything that was scanned as a 360 view or 360 scan. It'll appear here. It will not appear on this general map where the 3D scans appear. So just so you know, if it doesn't appear there, you might see a little icon appear down here. Okay. So then we have the difference between simple scan and complete scan. So the difference here is the simple scan, as you can kind of make out by the icon right here. The simple scan refers to when you're capturing using your mobile device, your iPhone or your iPad, and it allows you to just do a single row of images. So as you're turning around, you just do one single, I guess, layer, if you will, of images that will stitch together into a single ring. The complete scan, again, as you can kind of make out by the icon down here, you'll turn around once around the middle, and I think then you'll go do the bottom. So you'll do the bottom row. You'll point the camera down further to kind of incorporate more of the entire sphere into that panorama. Keep in mind when you're doing a complete scan, you're going to be rotating, you're doing 360 degrees, you're going to be doing that 3 times. So they are a little bit more time consuming. Depending on the iPhone model that you're using or the iPad model that you're using, whether or not you have a wide angle lens will determine whether you really want to do that complete scan or maybe it, not necessary. So a simple scan, just like it says, is definitely simpler. And allows you to capture the whole 360 much faster. So if you are using an iPhone 11 or newer, or I think the brand new iPads that just came out also have the wide angle lens, which, by the way, when you're taking a picture with your iPhone, you get to choose that you're using the wide angle. Kirk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you don't get that option. If Capture sees that you're using an iPhone that has a wide angle lens, it's just going to opt to use that lens because it already knows that you have that as an option. So, so for me, that is correct, Kirk?
Yeah, we'll just use on an iPhone 11 or the latest iPad, we'll use the ultra wide.
Okay, that's what I thought. I had never seen an option to choose between different lenses. So yeah. So I've got the iPhone 11. If I use the simple scan, it'll know to use the wide angle lens. I suppose regardless, doesn't matter which, it'll just know to use the wide angle lens. And by doing so, the simple scan is, kind of good enough, right? Because even though I still have a slightly larger blurry area above and below my scan, rotation, the simple scan, it's still, I would say, good enough to see everything that I need to see in the scene. I don't see the ceiling, but I don't know, maybe that's not as important. If you want to show off the ceiling, if there's a chandelier, you can do that. And I would say that you can also, in areas that you want to incorporate more of the ceiling, you can do a complete scan. And then in other areas where it's not as important, you can just do a simple scan. You can go between the two. It's not like for the entire model, you are fixed to, capturing only the one way that you've chosen at the very beginning. So you can go between the two. And that's about it. I hope that makes sense. If we need to, clarify any of that, just let me know in the questions panel, and hopefully we'll be able to get to that towards the end there. Okay, so that's that. Let me see what else I wanted to talk about here. The importance of turning around the camera. This is incredibly critical, and for anybody who has worked with photography and panoramas, would have a very clear understanding of this. There is a point inside the lens of any camera. That point is what you want to kind of pivot around to, minimize or hopefully remove the parallax that happens when you're just holding the camera out like this and turning, around yourself. So when we're doing panoramas, it's really, really easy and totally natural to hold the camera out in front of us. I want to see the screen, so I want to see what's happening. I can hold it out in front of me, and I'm, most often I'm capturing a landscape, which is super far away. So in cases like that, it's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter because everything is so far away. But anytime you have stuff that's a lot closer to you in the camera, it becomes a lot more critical, and you don't want to see those stitching lines. This is, nothing to do with Matterport. It's just the physics of photography. You want to turn as best as you can around the lens itself. This is true when you're doing panoramas with DSLR and you have something closer to the foreground, and it's true when you're doing these, 360-degree panos for Matterport as well. Same holds true. It's just the nature of photography. So it's really, really important to reduce that parallax. It's that parallax issue. What I mean by parallax, if you're not familiar with that, if you hold out your thumb in front of you and kind of close one eye and then close the other eye, it kind of looks like your thumb is jumping back and forth. That's parallax. It's the same thing, and that's what causes the stitching issues when you're turning around yourself as you're scanning a pano, right? As you're doing a scan with your phone and you're holding it out in front of you and you're going around like this, and then you get this panorama or this scan position that looks completely, stitching issues everywhere, and it's just completely wonky and it doesn't look really good. That's the reason. It's because you're holding the phone out like this as opposed to turning your body around the phone. So very, very important. Couple methods that we've covered in the past to kind of get around this. One is to kind of pivot around your foot, hold the camera as much as you can directly above your foot, so that as you're pivoting around your foot, the camera stays, kind of vertically centered above your foot, and so you're turning around the camera. The other method, if you happen to have, you don't have to do it all the time, but it just kind of gets you more comfortable with that method of turning around the camera. I've done it in a video. You can see me where I have just like a pole. I have like a broomstick or something like that, where it acts as a pivot point directly below the camera, and that just kind of helps guide you. As long as that pole remains vertical and the camera is turning around the pole, then you're fine. Ideally, the pole would be centered with the lens and not directly centered with the camera, but that's getting a little bit nitpicky. I would say for the most part, it doesn't matter to that extent in our case, as long as you have the pole, just below the camera. Camera's kind of sitting on the pole, the broomstick or whatever, and you are turning around the broomstick. That'll just kind of help you get comfortable with, how that feels to rotate around the camera. So just wanted to put that out there. Super, super important, especially in these, smaller structures, smaller rooms, like we're about to see later on. When you have things that are just so close to the camera, really important to keep that rotation around the camera and not around you. Just keep that in mind. Okay, I think we did a good job getting through that. All right, sharing. So sharing is obviously critical, right? I mean, that's the whole point of capturing your models, is to collaborate with others, if it's for educational purposes or just for fun, if it's like your own models at home, or if it's for professional purposes, whether it's real estate or facilities management or retail, whatever it is, sharing is absolutely critical. So sharing, basically, if you have signed up for a free account and you upload to that, you can upload from a couple different capture devices to your free account. You can upload from your mobile device. If you do that, you're free to share your model, not a problem. However, there is a limitation. If you're using that 360 camera, 360 1X that we talked about, the Ricoh Theta or the Ricoh Theta Z, or the the Z1 or the V, any one of those 360 cameras uploaded to your free account, unfortunately, that right now is not shareable. Also, your free account and the sharing abilities is right now, it's all in beta. So because the iPhone capabilities and all that are still in beta, we still don't know where things are going to go, not in terms of sharing your iPhone models and so on and so forth. So just wanted to mention that if you do have a free account and you've uploaded something that was not captured with your iPhone and you're wondering why is it that I can't share, this is because right now the way it works with sharing and your free accounts, it is models uploaded from your iPhone or iOS device only. If you have a starter account, or if you desperately need to share your stuff, go ahead and upgrade to the starter account, right? From the starter account at $10 a month, you can share anything you want. You have 5 active models that you can share, however you want, regardless of what device captured that that model. The only limitation with the starter account, I just wanted to throw that out there, not sharing related, but to the starter account, you can only upload either models captured by your iPhone, your mobile device, or your 360 device, not the Pro device. You can have a Pro device model transferred to your starter account, but not uploaded to the starter account. So just wanted to make that clear. Okay, I think that's about it. Let's see here. Yeah. So that does it for the how-tos. Let's go ahead and move on. All right. So wanted to get through before we jump into the Q&A, and I know you guys have been awesome in sending in a lot of questions, and we want to get to that as quickly as possible. I just wanted to talk a little bit about support and how to get your questions answered outside of this webinar. So basically, a couple things. One, we still have a camera backlog, and we greatly appreciate your patience with that. We're working through that, and we're getting updates all the time. If you did order a camera and you're waiting for it and you want to get a better idea of the status of that camera, here's the link to go to check that out. So we have this on our website right now that you can go there. I believe if you just put in some information, so it's a pretty simple form that you can fill out, and it'll find your order and give you a status update on what's going on. So hopefully that helps. And as far as support issues are concerned, we know that for anybody who has sent in a support request via email or to support@matterport.com, you have been incredibly patient and have waited a long time to get a reply, and we do apologize for that. We were hit with a pretty major amount of support requests. So basically, let's see here. If your concerns are regarding this deleted models that you want restored, unfortunately, that is not something that we can do. In a later session, we should have some information. Actually, if you just go to support.matterport.com, you can search for backing up, and there should be some support articles on how to back up your Capture app, the data from your Capture app. But we can no longer restore deleted models from your account. For anybody on a new account, you don't have to worry about this because you're not deleting anything, you're just archiving. But anybody who's still on the classic plan and deletes a model, unfortunately, that deleted model can no longer be restored. But as you know, re-uploading that model data from Capture doesn't cost you anything. There's no processing fees or anything like that. So that's basically, the workaround. That's what you have to do, which means hold on to those backups. Back up your Capture data and keep that kind of archived on your machine. And so when you do need that model restored, you can just re-upload the Capture data, get it reprocessed, and you'll have a new model in your account. So if you're not familiar with how to back up your model data from Capture, please check out some articles that we have in the support pages. Also, phone calls are currently the best option for resolving your issues. In a second, we'll get to the phone numbers and all that. But again, as I mentioned before, we're still working through a tremendous backlog of support requests sent in via email. So if you do send in an email, it's first in, first out. So we're still working through, emails that came in a while ago, unfortunately. But phone calls, we're able to address every phone call that comes in. Yes, you may have to wait, 15, 20 minutes on hold, and I do apologize for that. But we are able to get these days to every phone call that does come in. So please, if you do have an urgent request or anything that needs to be addressed, quickly, call us up. And other than that, stay connected and follow us on Facebook. If you just go to facebook.com/Matterport, you'll get to the official Matterport corporate page. Continuously updating that all the time with what's going on, if it's support related issues, if it's things that Kirk is working on or other teams at Matterport are working on. We try to always keep that updated. So if you are interested in keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on with Matterport, check out the Facebook page. And there's that, as well as any concerns, known issues, bugs, things like that. We do have a support page. I'll get to that in a second. If you go to support.matterport.com. In fact, let me show you exactly what to do to get there. I hope you can still see my screen. I think you can. So if you just go to support.matterport.com, let me take a step back real quick and get to the phone numbers. Scroll all the way down and you get down here to ask a question. There's our wonderful support team. And here you can use this form to submit a question. Again, we're not going to be able to get to those because we're still working through a tremendous backlog. But if you scroll all the way down on this page, you get to all the phone numbers. If you're in the US, 408-805-3347 is the phone number. Anywhere else, here are your phone numbers. Take advantage of those to get your questions answered. Let's go back to the main support page. If you go here and you search for known issues, we get to these pages, and here's the one that I was referring to. This is the one related to Capture. So if you are running into issues related to Capture, this is the page to find. You just saw how I was able to find it pretty easily. And so this is the page that we try and update constantly. You can see here issues related to the 4.0 and 4.0.1 and so on. So this is also a good place to go and be updated if you are running into issues with Capture. Check out this page and see if there's anything that's been updated with known issues that we are running into. Okay, and I think that just about does it. Did I have anything else that I wanted to cover? I think. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, certainly take advantage of these support pages. You can just search for anything you want here. We've got a lot of articles, well over 300 articles about all sorts of things. So if you are joining us and you're just getting started, just know that if your question is like how to related, how do I get around this? I'm having issues with that, and it's not just like a bug that you're running into. These support pages are a really great asset and resource for finding out all sorts of how-to information. So please do take advantage of that. And with that said, let's go ahead and turn it to Q&A. Kirk, you ready? Let's see what these guys have to say.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Okay, so I've got my questions panel open here. All right. Okay, so starting at the top, Andrew sent in a question. How can you ensure your external 360s align such that when you click on them from the inside, the best view is shown first? It seems to be random to me. Okay, so external 360 views, I'm thinking that you're referring to the 360 views, like I talked about before, the difference between 360 scans and 3D scans. And when you pin a 360 scan to your model, you can kind of navigate to that via what we call a little portal. It looks like a little round circle that is in your model, and you can get to that. And if you do have too many 360 views just all bunched up together, if they're all kind of in a path of 360 views leading out to a place, that's not really the best use of 360 views. You don't use them in the same way you would use 3D scans. You don't need to do a path of 360 scans or views to get out to a certain location. So just have the one or two that are out in the distance. If you did happen to capture several kind of in a row, you don't need them all in your model. You can certainly refer to them via the highlight reel, maybe in a better kind of way to navigate to them, so that you don't have a lot of those pucks, those not pucks, but those 360 portals overlaying one another. Because if you do have that, then yes, you're absolutely right. It's going to get very confusing, and you don't know on which one you're clicking as a visitor. So try to just have one 360 view out there in the yard or beyond the 3D model in the same direction. You can have one over this side and then one over there, and that way you can kind of go between those the inside views and the outside views more easily. But if you have a whole bunch of them all kind of clustered together, it can definitely become very confusing. So just to avoid that altogether, I wouldn't have them all out there the same way you have 3D scans clustered. Okay, hopefully that.
Can I throw one additional tip in? So when you place a 360 view, the location of the 360 view relative to the rest of the model is obviously the first thing to get. But you then also, in either Workshop or in Capture, you can tap on that 360 view and you can rotate the view as well. And this is a little bit more of a subtle thing, but that can also help make sure that the rotation of the 360 view is lined up and appropriate for where it is relative to the model. So for instance, we try to do this automatically, but we sometimes get that wrong. So if you place the 360 view, you tap on it or you click on it in Workshop, you can rotate that 360 view and it'll give you a ring. I'm trying to pull up something I could demo real fast, but it'll give you a ring and you can rotate that clockwise or counterclockwise because you'll see the direction and the orientation of that view in there. And then you can look at the map, the 2D bird's eye view of the 3D scan map and say, oh, wait a second, I need to tweak this a little bit. That will at least get you to the point where the content you see in the 360 view, when you click to it and come back to it, is oriented correctly to the rest of the model. So that basically it's consistent. As a viewer, as a traveler, I would be in the model, click to the 360 view, go to it, and the view in the 360 view remains aligned and consistent with the rest of the model. So I'd say also check that in addition to the tips that Amir was talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Great points. Forgot to mention that you can turn those, whether it's in Capture or even later in Workshop, if you don't want to do it in Capture. So, okay, moving on. Let's see what else we got here. Ricky asked a great question. Does the system support the Insta360 1R? As already addressed by Kirk. If you missed it, working on it. So yeah. Okay, let's see here. Designs. Tim asks a question regarding iOS. What iOS do you need to have? I have old iPhone, so when I tried to download an app today, my iOS was too old. Or does it just rely on the camera capturing images? So yeah, with iPhone, it is 6S or newer. You definitely want a later version of the iPhone. Also, Kirk, is there a recommended amount of RAM in the iPhone that you would stick to?
Yeah, so the combinations here are typically, in terms of versions for iOS, we typically do one back. So we do iOS 12 and iOS 13. In the iOS world, adoption of new versions of iOS is typically pretty rapid. That's totally not the case on Android. Like Amir was talking about, we typically recommend the iPhone 6S or the Air 2 and above, and those generally have 2 gigabytes of RAM. And remember, RAM versus storage is different. RAM is your working memory, and storage is, the permanent memory that retains when you turn the device off. So we typically, the rules of thumb are the more the better, of course. But in general, if you're using an iPhone for iPhone capture or for a 360 camera, like the 1X, the Theta Z1, the V, you need to have 2 gig of RAM or above. We do support some of the older devices that only have 1 gigabyte of RAM. But if you try to download Cortex and use your iPhone capture or use a 360 camera, they'll give you a warning that says basically this is not supported. And the reason there is primarily due to RAM. We just don't have enough working memory to be able to do the 3D conversion. Taking that 360 imagery and doing all the math to calculate the 3 dimensions from that just takes a lot. And so the older devices just typically can't handle that. So yeah, bottom line, the more modern a device, the better. The faster you will scan, the faster you will align. So to the extent that you can get on a more modern device, great. Otherwise, it's 6S and Air 2 and up, and iOS 12 and 13. And obviously, we're monitoring iOS 14. We get on the development builds. We'll see how that's going and watch that migration and test stuff.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting that you mentioned the RAM being so critical for the 3D conversion. I didn't even take that into consideration. You're totally right, obviously. For me, it's always been an issue with alignment, right, when it comes to that. And this is, I just want to point this out, the importance of not taking too much distance between scan positions. So whether you're doing your scans fully on mobile or you're doing it with any of the supported cameras, it's really important to stay within that 5-6 feet. I know we say 5 to 8 feet. I generally try and be a little bit more conservative with that. And the reason is, for anybody that doesn't know, capture will initially, after you've captured that scan and it's transferred, or it's already in the iPhone and it aligns with the previously captured scans, the first thing it does is try to align with the very last scan position that you captured. And if it can't find alignment there, whether you took too much distance or if you're in another room, then what it does is look at every other scan position on that floor in capture. And so that can add up to be a tremendous amount of data, which takes a lot of RAM. So that's why if you take less distance between scan positions, you may feel like I end up with more scans and it's going to take me longer to get through this structure. But in fact, it works the opposite way because you spend a lot less time aligning to the previous scan. It has a lot more overlapping alignment data and allows you to move on to the next scan faster. So just something that's worked for me with my scans. Okay, great question by Andrew. Can you add another scan or 360s or make changes in capture, whether it's markings or anything like that, and then upload without it being a completely new space? Unfortunately, Andrew, the answer to that is no. Basically, the way I like to think about it, an analogy I've always drawn here, is baking a cake. The scan data that you have in Capture are your raw ingredients. These are, the 2D images, the photosphere, the 3D point cloud data, manifest that kind of ties everything together, and so on and so forth. All that data gets pushed up into the cloud in your processing engine, which bakes it into a complete model. The complete model and what you have, the raw information in Capture, are two completely separate things. They're not the same. And so if you add more raw ingredients to your Capture app, you can't just add it to the completed cake at the end. You got to bake a new cake. So yeah, that's just how that works, unfortunately.
I will note that we do know that this is a workflow that has clear value in multiple cases. And so one of the ways is the system, like Amir described, it is very much an ingredient and cake oriented process right now. We've been looking at how in the future we could offer variants and incremental versions and things like that. But as you might imagine, that does require some pretty significant re-architecting how we create our system and models and so forth, and make sure that it doesn't get too confusing as well. So it's definitely a known thing. At the moment, the model that Amir just described is what we've got.
Yep. Okay, let's see what else we got here. If anybody, previously I'm seeing just some messages regarding audio quality, and if anybody's experiencing any audio issues, I do apologize. We are going to have a recording of this, and hopefully that'll work out better. So you will be able to revisit this on demand later on. Okay, moving on. Let's see, how are we on time? We got a few more minutes. Okay, will there be other release in the future for the new iPad Pro that utilizes the lidar sensor with Matterport Capture? Kirk, maybe you can take that one.
Yeah, so we were very excited to see that come out. We are experimenting and evaluating to try and understand, as you go through and capture with the new iPad, it's creating a 3D mesh in real time as you go. And so there's a couple different scenarios we could imagine looking at there. First is assuming forward-looking devices come out with similar capabilities that could enhance the Matterport for iPhone and Matterport for iPad capture in terms of using both the imagery data that we're collecting now and converting to 3D, but actually having an active depth sensor. Can we then create a better 3D structure? Is it basically the case that our 3D conversion plus the iPad lidar depth data becomes a better synthesis and a better 3D model? So we're looking at that very carefully to try and understand whether we can leverage that or not. Because if we can, that would be super cool and awesome. So as we get further into that, stand by and we'll let you know, if and when and how that would work.
Great. Speaking of the lidar sensor, how similar, what is that? Do you know anything, Kirk, about the lidar sensor on those devices? Because when I think lidar, I think a pretty big, really expensive machine on cars that spins around and is very accurate in its depth. Is it laser that they're using? I mean, can it technically be even called lidar?
Yeah, this is, I would say the short version of this is that I think Apple is using this as a marketing class of things, like people understand the term lidar in general. I mean, it is technically a time-of-flight sensor. It is not the traditional lidar system that you would expect if you knew about lidar scanners, like the BLK360, the Leica high-end scanners, the Faro scanners. Those use an actual proper lidar system. Lidar systems that you see on the top of self-driving cars and things like that are proper. I think in this case, in general, the broader class is it's an active depth sensor. So very much like the old Google Tango phones, and like some of the flagships, some of the Android flagships have active depth sensors so that you could, it's emitting a signal and looking for the return and bouncing back a little bit like radar, the analogy, and that's why lidar is called lidar, like radar. But it's an active depth sensor. So the thing is, it's actively sensing it. So for instance, up until this point, we use Cortex to synthesize that depth data just from imagery. It's not photogrammetry. Another term that you might hear is photogrammetry. And photogrammetry is typically, I take a lot of photos. And if I take a lot of photos around an object or a thing, then you can often reconstruct that three-dimensional object fairly well. The downside is that typically to do really good photogrammetry requires a tremendous number of photos, like hundreds. So in general,
from different angles as well, right?
From different angles. You need lots of different angles because you're trying to get all of that imagery data. So the interesting thing here is as we go forward and as this world evolves, where even the devices in your hand may have an active depth sensor,
the real question is, okay, what's its range? What environments can we use it in? And what kind of models can we create from that? And where can we use it to augment what we're already doing? So the hopeful case here is that basically we can leverage just additional signals and additional information to create a better model.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, that's great. Okay, so moving on, just gonna, we're just not gonna be able to get to all the way. We have a tremendous amount of questions here. So I do apologize for not being able to get to all of you guys. Just want to make sure that we're as thorough as possible. So, please stay tuned. We're not going to ignore you. All right. So, okay, we have a question here. Any update for Apple Watch? Will be nice to have a shutter button, small viewfinder. I mean, I can't imagine, that the small screen on the Apple Watch will be great for, producing a mini map kind of thing, but maybe to trigger a scan.
We have talked about that in a while. So that topic is in our backlog. Right now, unfortunately, we have higher priorities that we need to keep working on. And so this is one of those cases where there's no shortage of really interesting ideas that we want to tackle, but we've got to be really diligent about trying to make sure that we prioritize and pipeline those into the development team. So it's in the queue, but I don't have any projection for when we do that. I mean, that's been, as soon as the watch came out, everybody's like, oh, look, I can tap and trigger.
Nice. Got to see that's actually being talked about. That's great. Okay, so
we have a long. I just want to warn that we have a long queue. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of things to work on. All right, so with really just a couple minutes left, I want to take these last few minutes. We, I believe, covered everything that we had planned for this webinar, and I do appreciate all your attendance. I just wanted to cover, something that that we wanted to introduce in this webinar series is like the model of the week. So with that said, I think you should still be able to see my screen in our Destination Everywhere site. Let me just close this up so I can see my screen. If you go to go.matterport.com/destinations, you get to this cool site where we're curating a whole bunch of, let me just show you the whole thing here, a whole bunch of really like just top end models that we are in love with. So good place, if you've got some time in front of the computer to check it out. Because we're running, kind of a smartphone or iOS themed webinar this morning, I'm going to go with this one here that I personally just really like. This kitchen, this was captured with an iPhone 11 Pro, I think. And getting back to smaller spaces and the importance of turning around the camera, you can see what turning around the camera can do. I mean, there's barely any stitching lines here, even on objects that are close by in these countertops. So this was really well done, and I love how the matter tags were added, pointing out these different features. And you've got basically just 2 scan positions. This could not have taken more than a couple minutes to capture this kitchen. And not only do you have it in true 3D, where I can turn around and kind of see its layout, I can come in here and get on these matter tags and see what's going on here. I mean, countless ways of taking advantage of this come to my mind personally. If you're in the business, a designer, this to me seems like a very designerish type kitchen. So if you were the designer of this kitchen and you wanted to include this in your portfolio, it'd be, pretty easy to meet up with your client after the space has been constructed and say, hey, do you mind if I capture this real quick? Take out your iPhone and just do so in a matter of minutes. So you have it, as part of your portfolio. If you're the client and you just had this made, or you're, just a cooking enthusiast and you want to share this space with friends and family, another good use case. Just, I don't know, just to me seems like no-brainer approach, and just like how this was done so well. Like I said, because they were able to turn around the camera so well, it just turned out really, really great. So kudos. And with that, we are going to sign off. Tremendous thank you to Kirk. Thanks so much, Kirk, for joining us.
Sure thing. Thank you, Amir.
All right. And thanks to all of you for joining us today, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening for you. I really appreciate it. And again, I do apologize for not being able to get to all your questions. I know we had a lot of them. We're going to do our best to address them on social. So please follow us on social, if it's Instagram or the Facebook page that I mentioned. If we can find a pattern or theme of questions, we're going to address them there after the webinar. And if we can't there, then we'll try and hit you up via email. So do stay tuned for that. And if you missed any of this, if you joined us late, again, this webinar will be available on demand. So stay tuned for that. The on-demand link will also be available, I'm sure, on social, and we'll also email that out to everybody who registered. So you'll have no doubt we'll be able to find it. Okay, thanks again very, very much. I do appreciate it. And that's it for us. We'll see you in the next one. We'll do this again in a couple weeks. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.